Welcome to The Next Word. I'm your host, Christine Warnke, and today we have a very special guest in Miss JaLynn Prince, who co-founded the Madison House Autism Foundation with her husband. And thank you for speaking with us today, JaLynn. It's great.
And thank you for the very kind invitation.
Oh, you are welcome. I mean, what you have done with this foundation here in Montgomery County, in our own backyard, has been wonderful. So how did it start? What prompted you?
Well, first of all, having a son who was on the autism spectrum. And our son is Madison, and Madison House in Madison Fields happens to be named after him. And we became aware very early on, well, at about 3, that he may have some challenges. And we had no idea what autism was. The only mention that I'd ever heard of autism happened to have been on St. Elsewhere, where a doctor had had a son who was autistic, and he was rearing the son alone. And that was the only framework that we had. And at about 3, there were some tests being made, and he was put into an autism class. I didn't think he was autistic at the time, but I thought if he's going to learn well in that type of an environment, let's go with the flow. And actually, he was autistic, and the rest is history.
The rest is, but you really started. You're very humanitarian. I know that about you, and you started really as a photographer,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what's got you into really this humanitarian spirit and wanting to help others. Let's talk a little bit about your life.
All right. Well, I grew up in a small town in the Rocky Mountains. I started working on community development, which plays into this, in saving a historic old church. I was about 16 at the time, helping 2 older women prevent the demolition of this beautiful building. So that brought me into community things, and as I was growing up in the West, I was heavily involved in the arts, which turned out to be also something with photography, and that became my medium of artistic expression largely, although some other things do exist. And that has taken me around the world. And I've worked with NGOs. For those in the U.S. that aren't familiar with that, that's like a 501c3 here. And I had the opportunity of photographing a lot of very challenging things for different organizations and taken into the heart of the issues that they were working with. And after a period of time, I started to realize, there's an issue that is brewing in the U.S., and my son is part of that demographic. Maybe I should take some of the lessons that I've learned from leaders heading NGOs and Grameen Bank and several other things, and put it into play, benefiting my son and others like our son, Madison. And that gave us the beginning of it. I did continue with my photography for a while. I still do some of it. And it's been mainly humanitarian, but it has been an amazing teacher because I've had the opportunity of talking to the civic leaders, talking to the people that are the researchers, the people that are the organizers. And it's been very helpful in putting together an organization like Madison House Autism Foundation. And we were challenged. We thought we were wanting to do a school. And we talked to people locally on a state basis and nationally. And they said, the need is for adults. We've got enough schools. We can always use another good one, but why don't you step into this arena, because that's where your son is going to be, and there are many others headed in that direction.
So what happens once a young adult becomes adult at age 21?
Mm-hmm.
They lose a lot of the support.
They do.
Network and the social programs.
Mm-hmm. And in a couple of states, it's even as early as 18, but in many states, there's continued education until the age of 21. Hopefully that there would be more life skills and different types of things taught in the last few years of high school. But when that ends, especially when we stepped into the field, there was very little available for adults to learn job readiness skills, to participate in community, to have organized situations that had meaning. There were a few things starting to pop up, and we started working on meaningful things that people can participate in, but then we also saw that we needed physicians that were trained differently than for the neurotypical population, that we needed financial advisors to help make plans for the long run, because parents then and now are still up at 2 a.m. wondering what's going to happen to my adult child when I'm no longer around.
Right.
And so we've been trying to answer that question and to figure out what some of the policies are nationally and on state levels that are impediments to making certain that people have full engagement in the community.
And you've all done an amazing job with this. Your housing network program, which is critical.
It is.
To any platform for young adults. You talk about how that started?
We started. There was a wonderful young woman who wanted to go to Wesley Seminary here. And the president of the school knew what we were about with our autism. And she had mentioned that she would only come to school if she could work with an autism organization. And he wanted her to be one of the students. And upon meeting her, it was absolutely amazing. And her mission in life has been to work on housing. And so we formulated a wonderful situation where she was filling many of the things that she felt called to do. And that happened to be the enormous need of people making appropriate adjustments, appropriate arrangements for where their adult child may end up being. And this is long before there were many self-advocates and people able to represent things for themselves, and it turned much more to parents and caregivers that had had at least some schooling or were living with autism. But things have evolved greatly.
I mean, greatly. And you've done so much in that space, which is critical for any young adult to continue with a good
because
life.
There are so many more things available, but there's not enough.
Right.
Because how does one have a meaningful life and participate in community? And the time clock is ticking for the parents because they're getting old. And very often they've had to rear their autistic individual with very little guidance, because in earlier years there wasn't as much support as there happens to be now. And we had a complicated situation because we had an 80-year span in our household. That my mother lived with us for 21 years. She had moved in with us. And when Madison was born, it was 1 month shy of her 80th birthday. And then having a very busy husband, 2 other children, and then taking care of the needs of somebody who was in their 80s and was very dependent on socialization factors through me because she wasn't driving at the time. Right. And then working with trying to figure out what autism was, because there weren't clear-cut guidelines at that time. When Madison was diagnosed, the prevalence rate, or when he was born, I will put it that way, when he was born, it was 1 in 2,500, and today is 1 in 36.
What, 1 in 2,500?
1 in 2,500, and now it's 1 in 36.
And that's because the research really didn't come into being until 2000, correct? When did they start? When did the research start to really pick up the data and the research? When people started?
That's an interesting and very loaded question. With children, it was developing, because we would see all of these wonderful young children with people at a desk or a table, working with different projects and trying to teach different skills and having schooling and so forth. And the children were starting to learn, but when it came to adults, there wasn't anything.
Right.
And those things needed to be developed. Now, when we stepped into things, we did see that there were some small pockets around the country where there was a one-of that was doing a great job. But a one-of helping maybe 40 people in a community was not taking care of the nation.
No.
And as we have been in the adult arena, we have seen that there has been little information collected on what lifespan is all about for autistic adults. And that's what we tried to cover. And we were the first organization to look at lifespan issues from 21 on. Now it's segmented in a way, and we're still progressing because we haven't really gotten into everything with geriatrics. But those things need to be looked at and explored, so appropriate care and expectations, and if there are some preemptive things that can prevent different types of medical situations later. It's kind of a new frontier in some ways.
Yeah, and the other new frontier, and I know you're a member of it, is through the National Institutes of Health, the Interagency Autism Collaboration Agency, correct? We can talk more about that when we come back after our break, but I do want to talk about, because I know you're a member.
Yes.
I know you're an active member on the Maryland level.
Yes. Through
the Maryland legislature, so we need you. So we're lucky that we have somebody like you here and in the state. But the NIH collaboration effort is tremendous.
We'd be happy to talk about that and to also tell you a little bit more about what we're doing as a pilot program in one state that has implications for helping the entire country.
Well, and that's the state of Utah.
That's the state of Utah.
And I should mention too, and thank you to your husband, Greg, as a co-founder, because I know he is partly very involved in the invention and the treatment of RSV in children.
He worked on things at UCLA with his doctorate. His mentor challenged him to pick a serious and important topic, and it was RSV, and little did we realize the impact that was going to have. And he came up with a treatment for infants that ended with RSV and premature infants. And
that's huge.
Yes, and I'm so proud of him, but he's saved many thousands of lives. And he's had some good partners that has worked with him, and one of them was Dr. Val Hemming, who had lived just a few blocks from here.
Oh, really? Okay, that has been working with him, yeah.
It worked in the beginning with him, although Greg brought the project to the table.
Well, I can tell you the community thanks you, thanks him, and the country thanks him for what he's managed to do for our children on that level alone. But we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back, and we'll continue this.
Wonderful.
You're watching The Next Word. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.
I don't know why you're so sad. You've got a roof over your head.
Bro, you gotta stop with that depression stuff. That's a white people thing.
Escúchame, en esta casa los hombres no lloran.
You all right?
It just feels like it's coming from everywhere.
Do you want to talk about it?
Thanks for hearing me out, bro. Appreciate it.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad. Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
Welcome back. You're watching The Next Word. I'm your host, Christine Warnke, and we're having a conversation today about children and young adults with autism. Thank you, JaLynn, again, creating the Madison House Autism Foundation with your co-founder, your husband,
Pretty cool
Dr.
guy.
Prince,
Yes.
pretty cool guy, great guy. But what you all have done in the last 16, 17 years, the programs that you have established for young adults with autism has been phenomenal. And one of really, frankly, you've set the standard for the country.
Whoa.
You really have. You really have. And
That's
what's
a
right
huge
here
statement.
in our backyard of Montgomery County, which we're proud of.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about the programs and
Right.
what you see as the next steps, but what you've done so far.
Good, thank you. We have had this interesting wheel that we've looked at with different quadrants or different slices of the pie, all with what makes a successful life for adults on the autism spectrum. And there are several areas that we have become very strong in. There are other areas that we have been nurturing, and now there are other people stepping in, thankfully, because this is a huge, huge topic. And making certain that things are pulled together in such a way that it can be impactful in people's lives. We were gifted the equity, and notice I say the equity, of a large farm in Dickerson, Maryland. And we currently have 270 acres, and it is an active farm. And it came our way 10 years ago. And we decided we wanted to do some important things there in enriching the lives of adults with autism, but we wanted to make certain that it was a place for the entire community to be engaged, because we didn't want it to be an isolated space with no other eyes on the situation, but to have it a viable, interesting place where people could share more understanding. And we started out with therapeutic riding, because there's a beautiful stable building there on the premises, and equine therapy. Those were available to veterans as well, and some younger children, but it was also made available to our prime clientele. We have developed into job readiness training. And I get a lot of very interesting responses from neurotypical parents, or parents of neurotypical kids, about this, because it's the type of thing where you teach somebody that, yes, you do need to show up and on time, and where do you put that cell phone? When do you take breaks? When don't you take breaks? How often do you ask questions? Do you need to get instructions for the day? How do you accomplish the tasks at hand? How do you have lunch with others? How do you clean up from that? How do you finish up the projects that you have started, cleaning up for the day? And how do you prepare to go home? Now, those all sound like very simple things, but by the time you're learning each one of those things, and it's the neurotypical parents that are saying, I've got a lot of kids at my house, and I'd like to send them all over, because this is good basic training for everybody, about good work skills. And so even though it's a farm, the skills that are being taught are things that can transcend, and we've got people working in different places in the community as a result of it. And we have a large number of people asking for our assistance and to expand our job readiness program. Part of it is also working with our animals and taking care of our animals. And it's amazing to see what taking care of a large horse and leading it from one place to another can empower somebody to feel that if I can move a horse that's well over 1,000 pounds from point A to point B, maybe there's other things that I can do.
That's wonderful. Wonderful.
And it's powerful. And we've had younger kids that have been nonverbal utter their first words on horseback.
Oh, that's great.
So there's all sorts of things, but we've made certain too that we bring neurotypical schools to the farm, part of agricultural education, because not only do they learn about farms and what is in our ag reserve, but we teach them about autism, because very often there are others that may be attending those field trips that are on the spectrum, because it's one of the activities that everybody can participate in on a farm, doing a hay ride, painting pumpkins, doing different types of things. They learn about each other. They look at autism, and it's demystified in a way and made to seem more normal. But we also have other events for the community to come out there. We've had arts festivals, we've had music festivals. We're just building a brand new pavilion, thanks to the state. They're helping us with that. And we're hoping that corporations will come out and have events there and have summer events for their employees and their families. Learn a little bit about autism, meet some horses, enjoy the countryside, and take home a lesson of, hey, we can share space. There are things that can happen, and people are preparing things for them to enjoy their families. At the same time, their support can help us help others. So there's an interesting symbiosis coming about as a result. And we're trying to launch something right now, and we're looking for some people to help us with this in repurposing furniture, because we were also gifted free and clear a store in Buckystown. And we have it as antiques and collectibles, and we're just in the process to train people through repurposing furniture. You know, maybe a coat of paint, it may be changing the knobs on it, the wheels, whatever, or giving it an entirely different life. But it's teaching them skills to work as maybe house painters, finish carpenters, in marketing, in presentation, any one of a number of things. So these are the things that we're working on, and they're all in development, and we can develop them more as the greater the support that we have.
And that support can come in people helping volunteering, correct?
Yes.
Of course, donations.
Donations, volunteers, people with skills, with interests, always financial, because there's, horses always like to eat too, so there's a few things that we have to work on.
That's huge.
It is.
It's a huge undertaking.
It is a huge undertaking, but we can't do it by ourselves. This has got to be a community. Right. But there's so many lessons that we have learned that we are taking from the farm and from being here in Montgomery County that we are applying to a state across the country. It happens to be where I grew up, in Utah. It's a wonderful state that is very involved in families, and I had talked to some people from the CDC that had said, this is the ideal place to do this. And also a friend of mine, Eunice Shriver, she lived down the street from me, had done Communities of Caring in Utah.
Oh, she had.
And so that was kind of an interesting entree in saying, yes, we've got to do something in this state. And so during COVID, we started a pilot program. And that pilot program began with a moderate survey. People were still a little bit cautious about, should I do a survey? What is this all about? And we weren't well known at the time, although we've been working there ever since the inception of the organization. And we are working basically in 2, maybe 3 levels. We are informing parents. We're going into every city and every town in the state. We've got the Land Grant University working with us that has facilities in every one of the communities. They're helping us. Plus, we're depending on other people to help us, because with HIPAA, the records dissolve.
Right.
And so we're having to identify the families, and research of this nature hasn't been done on a statewide level before. But it's so critical to gather that information that with the things after somebody graduates and getting rid of the HIPAA thing and having people willingly participate. So we can find out their attitudes for the individuals, what they need and they want, what parents want to help provide, what siblings may find beneficial in blending their families and being supportive of their aunt or uncle, the sibling of their mom or dad. Any one of a number of things. There's so many different combinations, but we're collecting data, and we've done the largest housing assessment that's ever been done in the country for disability housing.
That's great.
And we had over 400 families telling us what their hopes were and what they felt would be the ideal situation. And we're trying to work with builders, we're trying to change attitudes, see if there's maybe a necessary movement in changing some zoning. But to make certain that people can be in the community and engaged in the community, but also have friendships nearby of people that they may have more in common with.
Right.
And how do we do that? And part of what we learned here in Montgomery County too is working with our thought leaders. And we're going in, and in Utah, we're going to the mayors and the town councils and the county commissioners. They're receiving newsletters every month, and we say we want between 3 and 6 minutes of your time every month because you've got a constituency. Or bank presidents, you've got families that are impacted. Miss Mayor, you know, you've got people here that you weren't really thinking about when you were elected that are living with autism. And so we're trying to inform them and also go in, identify the families, help them garner more information, and then to also find out what life is like with autism in a remote area.
Right.
We're going into urban, suburban, rural, remote, and indigenous properties.
Wow.
And this type of thing has never been done before, but we have had the balderdash, I guess, to do this.
No,
to launch this because of so many of the things that we've learned here in Montgomery County. And the thing that we're hoping with this particular situation that we're doing in the state of Utah, that we're keeping copious records and the stories and the interviews, many, many other things, so we can have it printed. We have had some reports done, and people are consulting those. They've even been taken into legislatures to be backed up with some statistics that hadn't happened before. And we're just trying to pull things together so we can have reports, so those that really like the official report with all of the research things necessary for an in-depth scientific research can happen, but then also the practical on-the-ground things. And we're asking families, what is it in your community that doesn't exist that you wish did exist? And then we're taking that information to the elected officials, to the bankers, those that work with mortgages, any one of a number of things, so there can be this symbiosis.
Stakeholders. And I wish we could talk for hours on this. You've done an amazing job. You and Greg have done an amazing job.
Well, there's been a lot of good people helping us along the way.
I know there have been a lot of good people. No, I know. But I want to bring you back, because now summer's approaching, so we're going to see how the Madison Fields is going to be thriving, I hope. But I want to bring you back. But thank you so much. Fortunately, we're running out of time.
Well, thank you so much for your kindness and for letting people know about this subject.
Absolutely, because it's just a jewel here of what you've all been able to do and the impact you've had nationally and internationally, for that matter. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for being with us to learn about the Madison House Autism Foundation, and we encourage you to get involved. This has been The Next Word. Have a great day.